You spend 1/3 of your entire life asleep. 33% of your existence on this earth occurs in a state you have been taught to regard as mere biological maintenance, a passive interlude between the moments that really count. You wake, you struggle, you strive, and then you collapse into unconsciousness, believing that nothing of consequence is happening in the dark. But Joseph Murphy, one of the most precise metaphysical engineers of the 20th century, revealed a staggering mechanical truth that demolishes this assumption entirely. Sleep is not biological downtime. Sleep is a metaphysical data transfer of extraordinary power and consequence. When you close your eyes and surrender to the night, the firewall of your logical, doubting, endlessly critical conscious mind goes completely offline. And in that unguarded silence, your subconscious mind, the master supercomputer that has been quietly architecting your entire physical reality, is left wide open, fully receptive, and vulnerable to programming. What you feed it in those final moments before unconsciousness claims you is not merely a passing thought. It is a direct command issued to the most powerful processing engine in the known universe. If you fall asleep rehearsing your fears, you are downloading a virus into a system that will execute that virus with perfect, unfailing efficiency. But if you learn to execute the nocturnal download, if you learn to seize those sacred threshold moments and deliver a precise, intentional blueprint to the night shift, you can program your brain to literally manufacture wealth, engineer solutions to your most complex problems, and restore the health of your body while you are completely unconscious. The factory runs while the manager sleeps. The question has never been whether the night shift is working. The question is, what have you instructed them to build? Consider the texture of your mornings, not the mornings you imagine in moments of optimism, but the mornings as they actually are. The alarm cutting through the dark, the immediate, involuntary flood of dread, the weight of unresolved problems pressing down on your chest before your feet have even touched the floor. You are exhausted before the day has begun. You carry yesterday's unfinished battles into a new day's fresh arena, and you fight the same wars with the same depleted weapons. The anxiety is not new. The financial pressure is not new. The health fears, the relational tension, the creeping sense that you are perpetually behind, none of it is new. It is a loop. And what Murphy understood, with the precision of a systems engineer examining a failing circuit, is that the loop is not being generated by your circumstances. It is being generated by an instruction set you are unknowingly reinstalling every single night. You are, in this moment, engaged in a profound strategic error. You are allocating the full force of your willpower, your intellect, and your emotional energy to 16 waking hours of effort, and then you are completely abandoning your post during the 8 hours that matter most. You are fighting a war on one front, while leaving the armory unguarded on the other. Murphy's promise is not a soft consolation, it is an operational correction. He is telling you with the calm authority of a man who has mapped the territory that the subconscious mind is the actual site of creation, that the physical world you wake up to every morning is simply the manufactured output of instructions processed in the dark. The heavy lifting has never belonged to your straining, exhausted conscious ego. It belongs to the infinite intelligence that operates your heart, your lungs, and your entire biological universe without requiring a single conscious thought from you. It follows, therefore, that the most leveraged action you can take in any given day is not the meeting you attend, the email you send, or the financial decision you execute. The most leveraged action is the precise and deliberate thought you place in the mind of the master builder before you surrender to sleep. Murphy promises a fundamental reversal of your experience of mornings. He promises that when you learn to command the night shift, when you learn to hand your desires, your questions, and your needs to the subconscious as a clean, clear blueprint before the firewall shuts down, you will begin to wake up differently, not to a battlefield, but to a harvest. Not armed for struggle, but arriving at the output of an 8-hour engineering session that you initiated, but did not have to supervise. The solutions were calculated in the dark. The answers were filed and cross-referenced and delivered. You wake up not to fight, but to receive. In this video, we will execute the data transfer protocol in its entirety. We will dismantle every layer of misunderstanding about what sleep is and replace it with a precise, operational framework drawn from the metaphysical engineering of Joseph Murphy. You will understand the exact mechanical reason why the subconscious receives commands so readily at the threshold of sleep, and why that same threshold, if left unguarded, becomes the most dangerous vulnerability in your entire system. You will receive the step-by-step architecture of the Nocturnal download, how to prepare the drive, select the file, and initiate the upload at the precise moment of maximum receptivity. This is not philosophy. This is protocol, and protocol executed correctly produces results with mathematical certainty. But I must tell you something important before we proceed, because there is a fatal error embedded in this system that destroys the work of most people who attempt it. It is called the morning abort. You can execute the Nocturnal download with perfect precision. You can plant the most powerful, most intentional blueprint your mind has ever constructed. You can hold it at the exact right moment and feel the deep, cellular relief of the solution as you cross the threshold into sleep. The subconscious will receive the command. The night shift will run the program. The 8-hour installation will proceed flawlessly. And then, in the first 30 seconds of waking, before you are even fully conscious, a single habitual thought can delete the entire program. Not weaken it, not delay it, delete it. I will give you the precise counter protocol to protect the installation in part 4 of this transmission. Do not skip that section. The integrity of your entire program depends on it. Before we go further, I want to establish a two-way channel between this transmission and those who are receiving it. If you are prepared to initiate the download, if you accept the terms of this protocol and are ready to begin commanding your nights with the precision of an engineer, leave the words "I initiate the download" in the comment section below. This is not ceremony for its own sake. It is the first act of deliberate subconscious instruction in this process, a public declaration that crystallizes your intention and begins to prime the system before tonight even arrives. And if you have not yet subscribed to Sacred Logic, do so now. Every transmission on this channel is a layer of the same architecture. Miss one layer, and the structure is incomplete. The channel is open. Let us proceed. The foundation of everything Murphy teaches about sleep rests upon a single non-negotiable mechanical fact. The subconscious mind does not sleep. This is not a metaphor. It is not a poetic way of saying that dreams are meaningful. It is a literal, verifiable biological reality that Murphy seized upon and elevated into a complete metaphysical operating system. Right now, as you read these words, your heart is beating, your lungs are expanding and contracting, your liver is processing, your immune system is patrolling, your cells are replicating according to a precise biological blueprint, and not one of these operations requires a single conscious instruction from you. You do not decide to beat your heart. You do not consciously command your digestive enzymes. The subconscious mind is executing these instructions continuously, without pause, without fatigue, and without the possibility of error, unless the blueprint it has been given contains an error. This is the continuous operation. The engine never stops. Consequently, the architecture of your reality is being built around the clock, not merely during your waking hours. The subconscious is not a passive storage system that simply files experiences away. It is an active, generative intelligence, what Murphy called the master builder, that uses the patterns, beliefs, and emotional impressions stored within it as a blueprint for what it then works to produce in the physical world. It does not evaluate these blueprints for their desirability. It does not apply moral judgment to their content. It does not distinguish between a blueprint of abundance and a blueprint of poverty, and decide which one you would prefer. It simply reads what is there and executes the instruction with the same neutral, relentless efficiency with which it beats your heart. The subconscious is the most obedient servant in the universe. It will build exactly what you tell it to build every single time, without exception. Now consider what this means for the structure of your day. For approximately 16 hours, the conscious mind is active, filtering, analyzing, doubting, worrying, and generating its continuous stream of reactive thought. During these 16 hours, there is a degree of natural filtering between what the conscious mind thinks and what reaches the deeper subconscious as a true command. The conscious mind acts as a buffer, imperfect, often inconsistent, but present. It is a firewall, and like any firewall, its function is to screen incoming data before it reaches the core system. This is why affirmations spoken with complete intellectual skepticism sometimes produce limited results during waking hours. The firewall intercepts the command and tags it as unverified, reducing its penetration to the deeper level where true programming occurs. The system is aware of the interference. The deeper level is partially protected. But at the threshold of sleep, something precise and extraordinary happens to that firewall. As the body relaxes and the conscious faculties begin their withdrawal from active processing, the critical, analytical barrier begins to thin. The logical objections grow quieter. The mental chatter that has been running like an overloaded processor all day begins to slow. And in this progressive dimming of the conscious guard, the access pathway to the subconscious becomes profoundly, dangerously, magnificently open. Murphy identified this transitional state, this border territory between waking and sleeping, as the single most powerful window for subconscious programming that exists in the natural rhythm of a human day. Not because the subconscious is somehow more powerful at night, but because the obstruction that normally stands between the surface instruction and the deep processor is temporarily removed. The command reaches the core system with a clarity and directness that is virtually impossible to achieve during full waking consciousness. It follows from this that whatever thought occupies your mind at the precise moment the conscious mind completes its shutdown is not merely a thought. It is the last input to a system that will now spend the next 8 hours processing, multiplying, cross-referencing, and executing that specific instruction at the deepest levels of your being. Murphy described this with an analogy that carries the precision of an engineering diagram. The last thought before sleep is the seed you plant in the most fertile soil that exists within you. The soil does not question the seed. It does not audit whether the seed is appropriate or deserved. It simply provides the conditions for the seed to become, with absolute certainty, what its nature dictates. Plant fear, and the subconscious will spend 8 hours cultivating fear, deepening the neural grooves of anxious thought, reinforcing the belief structures that generate fearful outcomes, and preparing the system to perceive the world through a lens of threat when the conscious mind comes back online. The harvest you wake to is the direct and inevitable output of the seed you planted. Conversely, and this is where the architecture of Murphy's teaching reveals its breathtaking power, plant a thought of resolution, of abundance, of perfect health or harmonious relationship at that threshold moment, and the same process operates with the same mechanical certainty in the opposite direction. The subconscious does not favor bad news over good. It does not have a bias toward failure. It is completely, perfectly, neutrally responsive to whatever blueprint is given to it. Give it a blueprint of victory, and the night shift will spend 8 hours building a victory. They will consolidate the neural patterns of success. They will begin to adjust the biological chemistry of your body toward the emotional state you commanded. They will process every piece of stored information, every memory, every experience, every connection in the vast database they manage, and begin to surface the specific pathways, ideas, and solutions that align with the instruction you issued. This is not mysticism. This is the continuous operation executing its function as designed. To make this even more concrete, consider the specific mechanism of what Murphy means when he says the subconscious processes a command during sleep. It is not simply repeating your affirmation on a loop while you snore. The processing is active and generative. The subconscious is, among other things, the seat of what we might call pattern intelligence, the capacity to recognize connections between data points that the linear analytical conscious mind would never consider because it is too focused on the immediate and the logical. When you hand the subconscious a desired outcome as its nighttime blueprint, you are activating this pattern intelligence against the specific target of that outcome. It begins to cross-reference your desire against the totality of everything stored within you, your skills, your experiences, your knowledge, your forgotten encounters, and to surface the connections that point toward the solution. The famous morning insight the sudden answer that arrives upon waking, is not coincidence. It is the report of a completed calculation. This understanding transforms the meaning of sleep from passive absence to active engineering. The person who falls asleep without intention, who simply allows the accumulated residue of the day's worries to be the final data delivered to the system, is not resting. They are issuing a command. It happens to be a command they did not consciously choose, drawn from the loudest and most recent emotional content available to the system at shutdown. The fears about tomorrow's bills, the replayed argument, the scrolled images of catastrophe from the news cycle. These are the blueprints the uninstructed subconscious receives, and these are the blueprints it executes through the night with the same perfect loyalty it would give to any other command. The output, accordingly, is more of what was already present. More anxiety, more evidence of limitation, more confirmation of the beliefs that generated the fear in the first place. The loop continues because the blueprint continues, and the blueprint continues because no one has yet decided to change it. What Murphy is offering you is the decision to change it, not through force of will, not through intellectual argument with yourself about whether you deserve better, not through the grinding exhaustion of trying to think your way out of circumstances by day. He is offering you the precise moment, that nightly, renewable, freely available window at the threshold of sleep, where the subconscious is maximally open, the firewall is offline, and a single well-constructed thought can reach the master builder without obstruction and be received as the absolute command it is. This is the leverage point. Every night of your life, without cost, without special equipment, without permission from any external authority, you have had access to the most direct line of communication to the subconscious that biology provides. Murphy is simply telling you to pick up the phone. The implications extend beyond the personal and into what Murphy called the activity of infinite intelligence. The subconscious mind, in Murphy's framework, is not merely the personal processor of individual experience. It is the individual's point of contact with a universal intelligence, a first cause that is the source of all pattern, all law, and all creative possibility. When you plant a deliberate seed in the subconscious at the threshold of sleep, you are not merely activating a personal neural process. You are making a request of the universe itself, through the only channel by which such requests can be formally received and acted upon. The subconscious is the ambassador between your individual awareness and the infinite. It carries your blueprint to the first cause and returns with the resources of the entire system arrayed in service of your instruction. This is why Murphy's results, and the results of those who have applied his teaching with precision, often exceed what any rational calculation of personal resources would suggest is possible. You are not working with your resources alone. You are working with the resources of the system that runs the stars. Therefore, the discipline of the nocturnal download is not an optional enhancement to an already adequate life. It is the correction of a fundamental error, the error of believing that sleep is neutral, that the night is empty, that what happens in the dark has no bearing on what manifests in the light. Every hour you have spent asleep without intentional programming has been an hour in which the night shift received their blueprint from the default content of an untrained, reactive, conscious mind. The results of that default programming are, in all probability, visible in your current circumstances. Not because you are beyond the reach of the law. No one is beyond the reach of the law, but because the law has been operating faithfully on the wrong instructions. The law does not fail. The law executes. The question has always been and will always be what it is executing. Consider what an architectural shift becomes possible when this understanding is fully absorbed. You are not trying to improve your life by attacking your problems more vigorously from the outside. You are redesigning the blueprint from which your life is being built. You are going to the source, the continuous operation, the master builder, the subconscious that never rests, and you are changing the instruction set. Everything that follows from a changed instruction set is the inevitable mathematical output of the new blueprint. This is not hope. This is not optimism. This is cause and effect operating at the level of first cause. Change the cause with precision, and the effect is determined. The only variable is the clarity and consistency of the instruction you are delivering. Murphy spent decades documenting what happens when people begin to apply this understanding with discipline and precision. The pattern of results he documented was not miraculous in the supernatural sense of the word. It was rather the completely expected output of a law operating as designed. People who changed the blueprint they delivered to the subconscious at sleep consistently found that their circumstances changed to match the new blueprint, not because reality bent its rules for them, but because the subconscious, now working from a new instruction set, began to reorganize their perceptions, their impulses, their ideas, their conversations, and their opportunities in alignment with the new command. The world did not rearrange itself. The pattern of interaction between the person and the world rearranged itself, which from the inside of a human life is experientially identical to the world rearranging itself. The blueprint changed. The building changed. The law is precise. And so we arrive at the operating principle that underlies everything else in this transmission. You are always programming your subconscious. There is no neutral position. There is no night when the instruction is not received and executed. The only choice available to you is whether that programming is deliberate or accidental, intentional or default, engineered toward your chosen blueprint, or assembled from the raw, unfiltered residue of a reactive day. Murphy's teaching is not the introduction of a new power you did not previously have. It is the introduction of conscious control over a power that has been operating in you since the first night of your life. The engine runs. It has always run. Tonight, you will decide what it builds. To understand the unshakable logic of how sleep programming works, we require an analogy precise enough to carry the full weight of Murphy's mechanical framework. Consider the architecture of a manufacturing operation. At the top of the organizational structure sits the manager, the conscious mind. The manager is intelligent, analytical, and responsible for the decisions and directions of the day. The manager reads the market, evaluates the options, argues with competitors, worries about quarterly reports, and makes the visible, deliberate choices that the outside world observes and judges. The manager is the face of the operation. But the manager does not build anything. The manager directs. The actual construction, the physical, tangible output that constitutes the real product of the operation, happens on the factory floor, executed by the subconscious, the tireless, uncritical, extraordinarily skilled factory crew that has been on shift since the moment you drew your first breath. This distinction is not merely structural, it is operational, and its operational implications are total. The factory crew does not have an opinion about the blueprint. They do not possess the capacity to look at the engineering drawings left on the workbench and decide that the design is inadvisable, that the structural specifications seem unrealistic, or that perhaps the manager should reconsider the whole project. They have one function: to receive the blueprint and build it to specification. They are the most efficient, most capable, most dedicated workforce in existence, and they have never once refused a shift, never once questioned a specification, and never once failed to produce exactly what the blueprint indicated. The crew is not the problem. The crew has never been the problem. The problem, when a problem exists, is always and exclusively the blueprint. Now observe what happens every night in this operation. At a certain hour, the manager goes home. He is exhausted. 16 hours of decision-making, emotional reaction, intellectual effort and conscious striving have depleted his operating capacity, and the biological system that hosts him requires that he withdraw from active supervision. He leaves the building, and in the act of leaving, he performs the single most consequential action of his entire day. He leaves a blueprint on the workbench for the night shift. This is the last blueprint the crew will have until the manager returns in the morning. This is the specification they will work from through the entire night, processing its implications, preparing the materials it calls for, and advancing its construction with the full force of their uninterrupted, tireless capacity. By the time the manager returns, the night shift will have accomplished more constructive work on the blueprint they were given than the manager's entire waking day of striving could have produced. The critical question, the question upon which the entire quality and direction of your life pivots, is what blueprint the manager leaves behind when he goes home. And here the reverse bridge becomes undeniable. For most people, most nights, the manager does not leave a deliberate blueprint. He leaves behind whatever was in his hands when the exhaustion finally overtook him. He leaves the balance sheets covered in red ink. He leaves the printout of the argument he had at noon, annotated with anxiety. He leaves the news headline that triggered his fear at 10 p.m. He leaves the scrolled images of other people's curated lives that generated his inadequacy. He does not intend to leave these things as instructions. He does not consciously choose to commission the night shift to build more debt, more conflict, more comparison, and more inadequacy. But he has left them on the workbench, and the crew has no mechanism for distinguishing between an intentional blueprint and an accidentally deposited one. They build what is there. This is why the experienced engineer, the practitioner of Murphy's protocol, treats the final minutes before sleep with the solemnity and precision of a chief architect preparing the most important technical submission of his career. Because that is exactly what it is. Those final minutes are the blueprint submission window. They are the last opportunity to place the correct specification on the workbench before the manager departs. And the night shift takes over with their full, unquestioned 8-hour commitment. Nothing about the quality of the night shift's work changes based on what blueprint is given to them. Their excellence is constant. Their output is always a perfect execution of the specification provided. The variable, the only variable, is the content of the blueprint, and that content is entirely within the control of the manager before he leaves the building. Consequently, the entire practice of the nocturnal download is, at its logical core, the practice of professional blueprint management. It is the discipline of ensuring that what the manager leaves on the workbench each night is not the emotional debris of the day, but a precise, intentional, architectural drawing of the reality he has chosen to build. Murphy was explicit about this in a way that many of his readers initially find startling. He taught that the feeling of the desired outcome, the emotion of already possessing the good you seek, is the blueprint. Not the words, not the intellectual concept, but the felt reality of the thing already accomplished. This is because the subconscious does not process language, it processes pattern, and the deepest and most executable pattern available to it is the emotional physiological state of the being it inhabits. When you feel the relief of a debt resolved, that feeling is an electromagnetic blueprint of a specific state of being. Hand that blueprint to the night shift, and they will spend 8 hours engineering the conditions under which that state of being becomes permanent. Let us press this logic further, because the analogy has more to yield. In a sophisticated manufacturing operation, the blueprint does not merely specify the final product. It contains tolerances, material specifications, sequential procedures, and quality standards. It is a complete technical document. In the same way, the blueprint you deliver to the subconscious at sleep is not merely a statement of a desired end state. It carries with it the emotional signature of that state, the confidence, the relief, the gratitude, the settledness of a being who has already received what they asked for. These emotional qualities are the tolerances and specifications of your blueprint. A blueprint submitted with genuine feeling, with a real cellular sense of the desired reality, is a complete, well-specified engineering document. A blueprint submitted as a merely intellectual recitation without emotional engagement is like an architectural drawing submitted without dimensions. The crew can see the general shape of what is wanted, but they cannot build it to the standard required because the essential specifications are absent. This is why Murphy consistently emphasized the necessity of feeling your prayer rather than merely thinking it. The subconscious does not live in the intellectual layer of your being. It lives in the deeper biological and emotional substrate, the level at which your body actually experiences reality rather than merely analyzing it. To reach it, your blueprint must be submitted in its native language, which is the language of felt experience. This does not mean you must manufacture a forced and artificial excitement about a future you have not yet seen. Murphy was precise on this point. The required feeling is not excitement, it is relief. It is the subtle but unmistakable shift in the body that occurs when a burden is lifted. When you move from the contracted state of anxiety about a problem to the expanded state of trusting that the solution is already in the hands of an intelligence far more capable than your own. That shift, held at the threshold of sleep, is a complete blueprint. The night shift knows exactly what to build. Furthermore, the analogy of the factory floor illuminates one of the most counterintuitive aspects of Murphy's teaching, the instruction to stop trying so hard. The manager who, upon leaving for the night, continues to send frantic messages to the factory floor, who hovers at the door, second-guessing the blueprint, revising the specifications, calling back in with new instructions every hour, does not produce a better building. He produces a disrupted manufacturing process. The night shift cannot build efficiently when the blueprint keeps changing and the manager refuses to trust the crew. Murphy's teaching includes a component of what he called the sleep of faith, the deliberate, conscious act of trusting the subconscious to execute the blueprint without the manager's anxious oversight. Once the blueprint is submitted, the most powerful and productive action available to you is to go to sleep and let the system run. Interference is not diligence, it is sabotage. The logic of the factory floor also explains why consistency matters more than intensity. A single brilliant blueprint, submitted once and then replaced the next night by the default debris of an untrained conscious day, does not produce sustained results. The night shift receives a new specification every 24 hours. If Monday night's blueprint is a masterpiece of intentional programming and Tuesday night's blueprint is a stack of anxiety and resentment, the crew does not continue building the masterpiece on Tuesday. They build the anxiety. The output tracks the blueprint with perfect fidelity. Therefore, the practitioner of the Nocturnal download understands that this is not a one-night experiment, but a continuous practice, a professional responsibility to manage the blueprint submission with the consistency of an architect who respects the law of cause and effect enough to never leave an accidental drawing on the workbench. It follows that the accumulation of consistent, aligned blueprint submissions over time produces something qualitatively different from any single session of deliberate programming. When the night shift receives the same essential blueprint, the same core instruction, submitted with feeling and clarity, night after night, they do not merely continue building the same structure, they build deeper. The foundations go further into the bedrock. The structural elements become more robust. The pattern becomes more fully established at the deepest levels of the subconscious, which means it becomes progressively less vulnerable to disruption by the reactive content of a difficult day. A deeply established blueprint in the subconscious is what Murphy meant by a true belief. Not an intellectual position, but a deep pattern that has been reinforced through repeated submission until it is as fundamental to the system as the biological instructions that govern the heartbeat. At that level of establishment, the blueprint is virtually self-executing. The factory builds it whether or not the manager thinks to submit it consciously, because it has become the default program of the system. And here is the final, unshakable conclusion of this logic. You are already doing this. Every night of your life you have been submitting a blueprint and the night shift has been executing it. The results in your physical world are the report of what has been built. If those results do not reflect what you desire, the analysis is not complex. The blueprint does not match the desire. The blueprint was either accidentally submitted from the reactive content of the day or deliberately submitted from a deep and unexamined belief that the desired good is unavailable to you. In either case, the correction is the same. Change the blueprint. Not through force, not through argument, not through grinding effort against the current output of the factory. Go upstream to the source of the specification. Take control of the workbench. Prepare a deliberate, feeling-rich, precisely specified blueprint. Submit it at the threshold moment when the manager departs and the night shift has maximum access to its instructions. And then trust the crew. They have never failed to build what they were given. They will not begin failing tonight. The entire architecture of the Nocturnal download rests upon a physiological and metaphysical phenomenon that Joseph Murphy identified as the most critical gateway in the human system, the state he called the threshold of sleep, and which modern neuroscience has since mapped and named hypnagogia. The word itself comes from the Greek roots for sleep and guide, And the naming is more precise than most people realize, because this state is not merely the beginning of sleep. It is the guide state, the passage state, the territory, where the border between the waking world and the deep subconscious becomes permeable in a way that exists at no other moment in the natural rhythm of a human day. To understand how to execute the nocturnal download, you must first understand exactly what this state is, why it is irreplaceable, and, most critically, what you must not do if you wish to enter it correctly. The hypnagogic state occupies the transitional territory between the alpha and theta brainwave frequencies. During ordinary waking consciousness, the brain operates primarily in the beta state, a high-frequency, high-energy state characterized by analytical processing, logical reasoning, and the constant evaluative chatter of the conscious mind. As the body relaxes towards sleep, the frequency begins to descend. The first descent is into alpha, a slower, calmer frequency associated with relaxed awareness, gentle introspection, and the early loosening of the critical faculty. This is the stage reached during light meditation, the quiet moments before full concentration engages. It is pleasant, but it is not yet the portal. The conscious firewall, while reduced, is still fundamentally intact at the alpha level. The descent continues, and then something qualitatively different occurs. As the body crosses the threshold into the theta frequency, 4 to 8 cycles per second, the wave pattern of deep meditation, creative insight, and the hypnagogic borderland, the character of consciousness itself changes. The linear, sequential processing of the analytical mind gives way to something more fluid, more associative, more receptive. Images may arise spontaneously, not the full narrative imagery of dreams, but fragments, symbols, impressionistic flashes. The distinction between self and environment begins to soften. The critical evaluating ego that stands guard during waking consciousness has, at this point, largely relinquished its post. The subconscious processor is now the dominant active system, and it is listening with an attentiveness and receptivity that has no equivalent in the waking state. Murphy understood this state not as a curiosity of sleep physiology, but as the biological provision of a perfect programming interface. The architecture of the human system includes, he taught, a nightly opening of the channel between the conscious surface and the subconscious depths, a naturally occurring window during which the instructions of the surface mind can reach the deep processor without the interference of doubt, skepticism, or intellectual objection. This is the law's own mechanism for allowing the thinker to update the system. The twilight state is not an accident of biology. It is an architectural feature of the human design. It is the access port, and like any access port, its function is determined entirely by what you choose to transmit through it. Here, however, is the first and most fundamental error that people make when they first encounter this teaching. They attempt to force the twilight state. They lie down and try to produce it through an act of will. They grip the intention, strain toward the threshold, attempt to manufacture the hypnagogic relaxation through sheer intellectual effort, and in doing so, they activate precisely the system that must be quieted for the portal to open. The theta state cannot be seized. It cannot be engineered from the beta state directly. It can only be descended into, ridden as Murphy described it, on the natural wave of physical fatigue as it carries the body and mind progressively down from the tensions of the day. You do not climb down to the threshold of sleep. You fall. Your role is to position yourself correctly for the fall, remove the obstacles that might interrupt it, and then surrender to the gravity that pulls the system naturally toward rest. This is why the preparation for the nocturnal download begins not at the moment you close your eyes, but well before, in the final hour of the evening, when the choices you make about your environment and your emotional state begin to determine whether the descent to the twilight state will be smooth and receptive or interrupted and contaminated. The manager who attempts to submit his blueprint at the very last second, in a state of still aroused anxiety from a screen-filled evening, does not find the workbench clean and the night shift attentive. He finds the system still in partial beta, the firewall partially engaged, the subconscious not yet at the level of maximum receptivity, and the chances of the blueprint reaching the deepest layers significantly compromised. Preparation is not optional. It is part of the protocol. Consequently, the state you are seeking to cultivate in the final moments before sleep is not one of concentrated mental effort, but of expansive, settled, bodily awareness. You are lying down in silence or gentle ambient sound. The lights are low or absent. The screens are off. We will address the catastrophic effects of screens in the next section of this transmission. The room is a quiet vessel for the descent that is about to occur. And you are not trying to think clearly or analyze anything. You are deliberately releasing the day's tensions from your body, from the muscles of your jaw, your shoulders, your hands, not through a formal technique, but through the simple, conscious permission to stop holding. You have been holding against the day's pressures for 16 hours. Now, the protocol begins with a single mechanical instruction to every tensed fiber: release. As the body releases, the descent begins. You will feel it as a progressive dimming of urgency. The sharp, demanding quality of thought softens. The problems of the day lose their immediate grip. The sense of time as a pressing factor begins to dissolve. This is the alpha entry. It is welcome. But you do not stop here. You continue the descent by refusing to re-engage the analytical process. Anytime a thought arises that demands evaluation, anytime the manager tries to return to the office, you do not argue with the thought or fight it. You simply decline to follow it. You allow it to arise and pass without giving it the fuel of your attention. Think of each arising thought as a car passing on the street outside the window. You acknowledge its passage and let it go. You are not in the car. You are in the stillness of the room. The descent continues. The images may begin, the hypnagogic fragments that signal the approach of the theta boundary. A face, a color, a half-formed scene. These are signs that the portal is near. They are the system's own signal that the firewall is completing its shutdown and the subconscious is taking over the primary operating role. This is the moment, the precise, critical, irreplaceable moment for which the entire preparation has been building. You are at the threshold. The access port is open. The Master Builder is listening with maximal attention and receptivity. What you bring to this moment, what you hold here with gentle but clear intention, will be received as the night's blueprint, with a directness and depth that no other moment in the day can approach. And the quality of what you bring here matters enormously. You are not arriving at this threshold with a speech or a list or a complex narrative of what you want and why you want it, and all the logical reasons it would be reasonable for you to receive it. The subconscious does not process through logical argument. At the theta level, it processes through pattern, through image, through feeling, through the direct impression of a state of being. You are arriving at the threshold with the simplest possible unit of instruction, a condensed, loaded, feeling-saturated seed, and you are planting it here, in the deepest and most fertile soil of the human system, in the exact moment when the soil is maximally receptive. Murphy compared this to the act of sowing. You do not force the seed into the ground. You place it in the prepared soil and trust the law to do the rest. The twilight state is the prepared soil. The condensed phrase charged with feeling is the seed. The planting is complete the moment you cross from waking to sleeping while holding that feeling. After that, the law takes over. The download is initiated. The factory begins its night shift. There is one more dimension of this state that Murphy addressed with particular gravity, the emotional quality of the descent. He taught that the ideal emotional state for the hypnagogic crossing is not excitement, not fierce determination, not the white-knuckled focus of a person trying very hard to succeed. The ideal state is something quieter, deeper, and more structurally powerful: contentment. The settled, preemptive contentment of a person who has placed their order with an intelligence they fully trust and now rests in the complete confidence that the order will be filled. This contentment is not passivity. It is the highest form of active faith. It is the emotional signature of a being who has done what is theirs to do, submitted the blueprint with clarity and feeling, and now releases all further responsibility to the system that operates the universe. In this state, the descent to sleep is not an abandonment of the work. It is the completion of it, the initiation of the download, the beginning of the night shift's operation. You close your eyes in the knowledge that the universe is now doing in the dark what you could never do alone in the light. It follows then that the twilight state is not merely a technique within the nocturnal download. It is the entire operating condition upon which the technique depends. Without the firewall offline, the blueprint does not reach the core processor. Without the core processor actively receiving in its theta state, the command is not registered with the full depth and permanence that produce real results. Every element of the preparation, the environmental discipline, the emotional clearing, the physical release, the resistance to re-engaging the analytical mind, is in service of creating the conditions under which this one precise, perfectly timed threshold moment can occur with maximum quality and minimum interference. Murphy did not teach a philosophy of night. He taught a precision protocol for accessing the most powerful programming window in the human system. The window opens every night. It has opened every night of your life. Tonight, for perhaps the first time, you will know exactly what to do when it opens. We now move from the theory of the threshold to the execution of the protocol itself. The data transfer protocol consists of 3 sequential operations, each building upon the last, each serving a specific and irreplaceable function in the process of delivering a clean, complete blueprint to the subconscious at the moment of maximum receptivity. These are not suggestions. They are operational steps in a technical procedure. Execute them in sequence, with the understanding that each step is load-bearing, that skipping or weakening any one of them compromises the integrity of the entire installation. The first operation is what Murphy framed as an act of spiritual hygiene, and what the data transfer protocol names with clinical precision, the cache clearance. Before any competent systems engineer attempts to install new software on a drive, they first verify that the drive has sufficient uncontaminated space to receive the installation. A drive full of corrupted files, fragmented data, and conflicting programs does not successfully receive new software, no matter how well designed that software may be. The installation errors, the files corrupt, the program runs unstably, if it runs at all. The same principle governs the subconscious mind at the threshold of sleep. If you approach the programming window carrying the unresolved emotional residue of the day, the compressed resentment toward the colleague, the running argument with a family member, the festering anxiety about the unresolved situation, that residue does not simply coexist peacefully with your intentional blueprint. It is active, emotionally charged data, and emotionally charged data has priority processing status in the subconscious system. It will compete with your chosen blueprint for the night shift's attention, and in many cases, it will win because it carries more raw emotional energy than a consciously chosen affirmation delivered in a state of mild relaxation. Forgiveness, therefore, is not a moral nicety in this protocol. It is a technical requirement. You must clear the cache before you can install the new program. Murphy's method was simple and consistent. Before entering the preparation for sleep, take a deliberate moment to address each person and situation that generated emotional charge during the day. Not with a lengthy emotional processing exercise, but with a clean, direct, technical release. I release the day. I forgive completely. The cache is clear. These words, spoken with genuine willingness to release, not to condone, not to forget, but simply to release the emotional charge from the system, perform a specific function. They remove the competitive data from the drive. They do not resolve the external situation. They simply withdraw the stored emotional energy from it, freeing the subconscious from the obligation to process it through the night. The situation remains in the world. The charge does not remain in the system. The drive is cleared, the installation can proceed. This instruction deserves development beyond its surface simplicity because the resistance to it is real and nearly universal. The mind that has been genuinely wronged, the person who is carrying a legitimate grievance or a serious financial fear, does not find it easy to release the day on command. Murphy anticipated this resistance and addressed it directly. He taught that the act of release does not require you to feel the release before you declare it. You declare it first, and the subconscious, which responds to the pattern of the declaration, begins to execute the release as a consequence of the command. This is the application of the principle that the subconscious takes direction from the conscious mind and executes what is commanded. You are using the same authority that will later issue the blueprint to first clear the space for it. I release. You do not need to feel free to say so. Say it anyway with the intention behind the words, and the system will process the instruction. The cache will clear. The operation is technical, not emotional. The second operation is the file selection, and it is here that the precision of Murphy's engineering becomes most clearly visible. Having cleared the cache, you must now select the specific file you intend to upload tonight. This is the moment of choosing your blueprint. And Murphy's instruction at this point contradicts almost everything the culture of affirmations and positive thinking has trained people to expect. You are not going to write a lengthy, detailed, logically argued description of the life you desire. You are not going to recite a paragraph of present-tense affirmations covering your financial situation, your relationships, your health, and your purpose. The night shift does not understand long, complex speeches, not because the subconscious is unsophisticated. It is infinitely more sophisticated than the conscious mind, but because at the theta level, the processing mode is not linear and verbal. It is holographic and impressionistic. A long, complex verbal program submitted to a system operating at theta frequency is like reading a detailed instruction manual to someone who has just entered a state of deep hypnosis. The words bypass the operating level. The instruction does not install. What the theta state subconscious receives with perfect fidelity is what Murphy called the condensed phrase, a single, short, emotionally loaded unit of instruction that conveys the complete essence of the desired outcome in the fewest possible words. I am wealthy. Perfect health flows through me. Divine order prevails in my life. The solution is known. These are not simplistic because they are short. They are powerful because they are compressed. They are zip files, entire archives of meaning and implication compressed into a single unit that the subconscious can receive, decompress, and process in its entirety. A zip file does not require you to read its contents to receive it. You receive the whole archive in a single transaction, and the system unpacks it fully on the receiving end. Your condensed phrase is that archive. It contains, in its 4 words or fewer, the complete emotional and conceptual program of the life you are installing. Choose it with care. It must be true in the sense of being genuinely desired, not merely intellectually appealing. It must carry, when you say it, a real felt resonance, a sense of something genuinely real and yours, not a wishful fiction. That resonance is the compression algorithm. Without it, the file is empty. This selection process should happen before you lie down, ideally in the quiet minutes of the cache clearance period. You are identifying with clear, deliberate intention the single most important installation priority for tonight's download. Not a list, not a rotation of priorities. 1. Murphy taught this singularity as a law of the subconscious. A focused command is an executable command. A diffused multi-target command is an unresolvable instruction set. The night shift, given a single precise blueprint, builds a single precise result. The night shift, given 10 competing blueprints of equal priority, builds nothing coherent because the system cannot simultaneously optimize for 10 different and potentially conflicting specifications. Choose one file. Compress it into a phrase. Charge it with the feeling of its already accomplished reality. You now have the installation package. The third and final operation is the upload itself, the lullaby loop. And it is both the simplest and the most nuanced element of the entire protocol. Having cleared the cache and selected the file, you now lie down in your prepared, quiet environment, and you begin the twilight state preparation described in the previous section. You allow the body to release. You permit the descent. And as you feel the pull of sleep beginning, as the alpha state softens toward theta, as the images begin to appear and the analytical mind begins its final withdrawal, you begin to repeat your condensed phrase. Not urgently, not forcefully, not with the intense concentration of someone trying very hard to make something happen. Slowly, quietly, like a lullaby, hence the name. The words drift into the room like smoke, unhurried and unforced. I am wealthy. Silence. I am wealthy. The repetition is not a drill, it is an escort. You are accompanying the phrase down into the depth of the descent, letting the words deepen with you as the threshold approaches. And with each repetition, you are holding, gently without gripping, the feeling, the specific felt quality of the desired state, the relief of the resolved debt, the ease in the body that corresponds to perfect health, the quiet confidence of the person for whom order prevails. You are not imagining a dramatic scene or constructing a detailed visualization. You are holding a feeling tone, the way a singer holds a note, not forcing it, not performing it, simply sustaining it with the breath of genuine intention. This feeling tone is the carrier signal for the blueprint. The words are the verbal zip file. The feeling is the transmission frequency. Together, they constitute a complete transmittable instruction that the subconscious at theta can receive and process with full fidelity. The moment of the download's completion is not something you can consciously mark, because it occurs at the precise boundary between waking and sleeping, the exact crossing point that, by its nature, you cannot be awake to observe. What Murphy taught is that the download is complete when you cross that boundary while holding the feeling. This is why the phrase must be simple enough and the feeling familiar enough that they can be sustained through the progressive dimming of conscious awareness without requiring focused effort. If the installation requires you to be awake to maintain it, it will not reach the core processor. It must be light enough to carry into the unconscious. A condensed phrase, repeated gently with genuine feeling, is precisely that light. It travels into the dark with you. And when the conscious mind finally releases its last hold on the day and the subconscious takes full command, in that last nanosecond of transition, the phrase and its feeling are the final input to the system. The blueprint is on the workbench. The night shift has received their instructions. The download is complete. Surrender, after this point, is not passive. It is the final and most important act of the protocol. Murphy was emphatic on this point. Do not monitor the process. Do not lie in the dark trying to stay awake enough to make sure it's working. The act of monitoring is an act of the conscious mind, specifically of the doubting, anxious function of the conscious mind that does not trust the subconscious to operate without supervision. And every moment you lie awake monitoring the process is a moment in which the firewall is partially re-engaged. The theta state is prevented from deepening, and the subconscious cannot receive the blueprint at its maximum depth. The moment the phrase and its feeling have been released into the descent, your work is done. Let go. Fall. Trust the system that has been running your heart every single night without your oversight. It has never needed your supervision. It does not need it tonight. Go to sleep. The download is running, the factory is working, the blueprint is being built. If the nocturnal download is the architecture of the night, then an understanding of the corruption errors is the architecture of its protection. Murphy taught with equal precision about the practices that destroy the work of the night shift, and the first and most devastating of these errors does not occur at night at all. It occurs in the first 30 seconds of the morning, before most people are even fully conscious, which is precisely why it is so universally practiced and so rarely identified as the catastrophic technical failure it actually is. This is the morning abort. It is the reason that countless people who have genuinely correctly executed the nocturnal download, who have cleared the cache, selected the file, entered the twilight state, and planted the seed with feeling and precision, nonetheless fail to see results. The installation ran flawlessly through the night, and then the morning deleted it. To understand why the morning abort is so destructive, you must understand what is happening in the first moments of waking. When the conscious mind returns from its nightly absence and begins to resume its function as the active operating surface of the being, it passes through its own threshold state, a mirror image of the hypnagogic passage called the hypnopompic state, in which the brain ascends from theta back through alpha toward the full beta frequency of waking consciousness. During this ascending passage, the system is in a state of extraordinary plasticity. The deeply processed work of the night is still active and near the surface. The neural patterns established during the night's consolidation are maximally accessible, and the emotional state of the emerging conscious mind is both highly sensitive and highly influential. What you think and feel in the first moments of waking has a disproportionate effect on the day that follows, precisely because the system is still in this ascending passage state, still, briefly, in the territory of high subconscious receptivity. Murphy taught that the subconscious, in completing the night's work and preparing to return processing authority to the conscious mind, essentially presents the completed blueprint to the emerging awareness, a final report, an output summary of the night's operation. This is experienced not as a formal report, but as a quality of feeling upon waking, the specific emotional tone that the subconscious has been working with through the night. If the night's blueprint was peace and abundance, the waking sensation, however briefly, carries that quality, a sense of ease, of rightness, of unspecified well-being before the conscious mind has yet attached itself to any particular thought or problem. This is the morning gift. It is the most vulnerable and the most precious moment of the entire cycle, the moment at which the previous night's work is closest to the surface of conscious experience and most available to be confirmed and stabilized. And it is precisely here that the uninstructed conscious mind performs its most catastrophic habitual error. The eyes open, the alarm sounds, or the light arrives, or the sound of the household penetrates awareness, and within seconds, sometimes within the first heartbeat of full waking, the conscious mind, operating from its years of established default programming, fires its first automatic thought. Oh no, I still have to deal with that bill today. I'm so tired. I can't face the day. Nothing is different, nothing has changed. These are not neutral observations. They are commands, issued in the ascending passage state during maximum subconscious receptivity, directly contradicting and overwriting the blueprint that the night shift just spent 8 hours installing. The emotional signature of fear, exhaustion, or hopelessness delivered in this threshold state is received by the subconscious with exactly the same authority as the blueprint delivered the night before. The new command countermands the previous one. The installation is aborted. This is the precise mechanism Murphy was describing when he spoke of waking in joy as a non-negotiable practice. It is not a poetic injunction to be cheerful. It is a technical instruction to protect the morning threshold from default programming. The first thought of the morning must match the last thought of the night. This is not metaphor. It is system coherence. A program installed with the command "I am wealthy," and then immediately countermanded with "I still have that bill to pay," is a system receiving two mutually exclusive instructions in rapid succession during maximum receptivity. The subconscious, faced with this conflict, does not synthesize them or choose the more positive one. It defaults to the more deeply established pattern, which for most people with years of habitual morning anxiety is the fear. The more recent installation is effectively wiped because the counter command, delivered with raw, automatic, unconsidered emotional energy at the ascending threshold, carries more immediate felt weight than the deliberately chosen affirmation of the previous night. The counter protocol is as simple as the error it corrects, and Murphy taught it explicitly. Before your feet touch the floor, before you check the phone, before you assess the day's obligations, before you open the first mental file of the morning's challenges, issue the confirmation command. 2 words are sufficient. It is done. Or, if you prefer the architecture of the download, the installation is complete. This phrase, delivered at the ascending threshold before the default morning programming has time to engage, performs a specific function. It confirms the blueprint. It tells the subconscious in the language it is already processing that the desired outcome is established reality, not a future hope, not a work in progress, but a completed fact being received into physical manifestation. This confirmation seals the night's installation. It prevents the morning abort. The program survives into the day. The second corruption error operates on the opposite end of the day's cycle, in the pre-sleep period rather than the post-sleep period, but its mechanism is equally precise and its consequences equally severe. Murphy named it among the most dangerous threats to the subconscious programming process, And the modern world has created a delivery mechanism for this error that is so prevalent, so normalized, and so relentlessly effective that it deserves to be treated as a public health emergency. It is the screen virus. Falling asleep while consuming news media, social media, or any form of screen-based content is not merely a bad habit or a productivity failure. It is, from the perspective of Murphy's engineering, the equivalent of handing the keys to your factory floor to your most hostile competitor and asking them to leave tonight's blueprint. You are surrendering the most sacred and powerful programming window in your daily system to external forces whose interests bear no alignment to your flourishing. The mechanism of the screen virus is an exact inversion of the nocturnal download, where the download exploits the reduced firewall of the pre-sleep state to deliver an intentional, beneficial blueprint to the subconscious. The screen virus exploits the same reduced firewall to deliver the content of media companies, algorithm-curated outrage feeds, and broadcast catastrophe to the same receptive system. The firewall is not selectively offline. It does not remain engaged for content you did not choose to install. It is simply offline. Whatever reaches the eyes and ears in that threshold state reaches the subconscious directly, with the same bypass of the critical faculty that makes intentional programming so powerful. The fear headlines, the manufactured urgency, the algorithmic parade of comparison and inadequacy, all of it reaches the master builder as blueprint material. And the master builder, obedient and non-judgmental as always, builds from what it receives. This is why Murphy's instruction to protect the final 30 minutes of waking life is framed not as a suggestion for improved sleep hygiene, but as a ruthless, non-negotiable act of self-defense. Those 30 minutes are the approach to the threshold. They set the emotional conditions under which the descent will occur. A descent initiated from a state of media-induced anxiety, comparison, or fearful speculation is a descent into a subconscious primed with exactly those materials as its available blueprint. The night shift, receiving no intentional instruction to override the final waking emotional state, will default to building from whatever is most present and most charged in the system at shutdown. If that content is fear, the night builds fear. The morning confirms it. The day delivers it. And the cycle continues its faithful, destructive, completely law-abiding operation. The ruthlessness of the counter-protocol is exact. Screens off 30 minutes before sleep. This is not a preference to be honored when convenient. It is a technical requirement of the installation process. In those 30 minutes, the system needs to descend from the beta stimulation of screen interaction toward the alpha baseline, from which the theta descent can naturally proceed. Feed the beta stimulation all the way to the moment of lying down, and the descent to theta will take significantly longer. Proceed through a more cluttered emotional field and arrive at the threshold with lower receptivity and a more contaminated programming environment. The installation, if it occurs at all, will be less clean, less deep, and less effective. This is not a theoretical degradation. It is a measurable reduction in the quality of the blueprint submission. And given that the blueprint submission is the most consequential action of your day, this reduction in quality is not a minor inefficiency. It is the difference between the factory building your design and the factory building the world's design for you. Therefore, the 30-minute pre-sleep protection window is, in Murphy's framework, the beginning of the nocturnal download, not a preliminary to it. It is the first act of the cache clearance. It is the initiation of the environmental and emotional preparation that will determine the quality of the threshold access. The decision to turn off the screen is not a passive one. It is a declaration that the final hour of your day belongs to you and to the master builder, not to the algorithms and the headlines. It is an act of sovereignty over the most powerful resource in your possession, the nightly access port to the subconscious mind. Guard it. The factory operates on the blueprint left on the workbench. Ensure that you, and only you, are the one who leaves it there. Having mapped the fatal errors with technical precision, we turn now to the master's own instructions, the specific guidance Joseph Murphy provided, not as a corrective but as a positive framework for the quality of the pre-sleep state. If the corruption errors tell you what not to do, Murphy's master tips tell you what to be. And the distinction between the two is important, because Murphy consistently taught that the subconscious does not primarily respond to the absence of negative input, but to the presence of positive, constructive, emotional pattern. Clearing the errors creates the conditions. The master tips fill that cleared space with the specific qualities that make the nocturnal download most effective. Murphy's central command on this subject was delivered with a simplicity that can be mistaken for lightness if its full weight is not appreciated. Never go to sleep feeling discouraged or dissatisfied. Sleep in peace and wake in joy. These 12 words are not a motivational slogan. They are an engineering specification. Peace is not the absence of problems. It is a specific physiological and emotional state characterized by settled, open, non-contracted being. The body of a peaceful person has a different chemical profile, a different neural firing pattern, a different electromagnetic signature than the body of a discouraged person. Murphy is not instructing you to pretend your problems do not exist. He is instructing you to deliberately transition from the contracted state of discouragement, which is neurologically a state of threat response, to the expanded state of peace, which is the state of maximum biological receptivity and subconscious openness. The mechanism by which this transition is most effectively achieved is the deliberate activation of gratitude in the pre-sleep period. Murphy returned to gratitude repeatedly, not as a spiritual practice in the conventional sense, but as a precise tool for shifting the emotional state of the system from contracted to expanded before the programming window opens. Gratitude is, from the subconscious processing perspective, evidence. It is the felt acknowledgement of good already present in the system. When you deliberately identify and feel gratitude for specific aspects of your current life before sleep, you are submitting to the subconscious a pattern of evidence that the universe is fundamentally cooperative and generous with you. This pattern, received at the threshold, establishes the emotional framework within which the night's blueprint will be processed. A blueprint of prosperity submitted to a subconscious primed with the evidence of existing generosity processes very differently than the same blueprint submitted to a subconscious primed with the evidence of existing scarcity. The soil matters. Gratitude prepares the soil. It is worth dwelling on the specific instruction "sleep in peace" from an engineering standpoint, because Murphy's use of the word peace was precise and consistent across decades of teaching. Peace for Murphy was not a passive state of emotional neutrality. It was the active, chosen experience of trust in the law, the deliberate act of placing the desired outcome in the hands of the subconscious with the full assurance that the law will process it faithfully and return results. This is the sleep of faith referenced earlier, not the faith of religious sentiment, but the operational confidence of an engineer who has submitted a correct design to a system he understands and trusts. The engineer who submits his design to the factory does not lie awake worrying about whether the factory will build it. He knows the factory will build it because that is what factories do. His peace is not pretense, it is accurate. The law is accurate. Peace is the correct response to an accurate understanding of how the law operates. Murphy also taught a specific practice for those nights when peace seems genuinely inaccessible, when the circumstances are so pressing and the emotional weight so heavy that the instruction to sleep in peace seems not merely difficult but absurd. His guidance here reveals the deep practicality of his approach. He did not say that peace must be felt before sleep is attempted. He said that peace must be chosen, actively, deliberately chosen, even if the full feeling of it has not yet arrived. The choice itself is the command. "I choose peace tonight" is a subconscious instruction. It is a declaration of the state you are commanding the system to enter. The subconscious, receiving this command from the authority of the conscious mind, will begin to process it. The body will begin to respond. The emotional state following the instruction will begin to move in the direction of the choice. This is the law in action. The inner command precedes the outer and inner experience. You do not feel peaceful and then choose it. You choose it, and the choosing creates the conditions for it to be felt. This principle extends to the condensed phrase itself. Murphy was clear that the phrase chosen for the nocturnal download should be selected not merely for its content, but for its emotional resonance. the way it actually lands in the body when spoken. A phrase that sounds impressive but produces no genuine felt shift in the system is an empty file. It has the form of an installation package, but no executable content. The test is simple. Say your chosen phrase slowly, quietly, in the silence before sleep, and notice what happens in your body. A genuine condensed phrase, one that has been chosen from real desire and charged with real intention, produces a subtle but unmistakable shift in the system when it is spoken in a state of receptive quiet. The shoulders drop slightly. The chest opens. The breath deepens. There is a faint but real quality of relief, of rightness, of something recognized. This is the body confirming that the phrase carries a genuine resonance with a deep pattern of desire in the subconscious. This phrase is executable. It will transmit. Murphy further instructed that the condensed phrase should be felt as true now, not as a future probability. This is perhaps the most demanding and most transformative element of the entire protocol, because it requires a specific and disciplined shift in the relationship between the conscious mind and time. The conscious mind, trained by years of linear experience, automatically processes affirmations of good as statements about a desired future, something that might happen, something being worked toward, something hoped for. And the emotional signature of hope is precisely the emotional signature of a blueprint that has not yet been installed. Hope carries within it the implication of present absence. The subconscious, reading the full pattern of the submitted blueprint, including its temporal signature, processes it as an instruction to maintain the state of absence, because that is the state the hope implies. I hope to be wealthy is a blueprint of not yet being wealthy. The subconscious builds exactly what the blueprint specifies. Murphy's correction is precise and requires practice. Feel the phrase as present fact. I am wealthy is not a statement about the future. It is a declaration about the nature of your being in the subconscious, where time does not operate as it does in conscious linear experience. The subconscious does not have a future tense. It has only the pattern of what is. When you deliver a blueprint charged with the feeling of present reality, not future hope, the subconscious receives a blueprint of a current state and works to bring the outer conditions into alignment with that current state. This is the operational precision that distinguishes Murphy's teaching from ordinary positive thinking. It is not enough to say the right words. The right words must be delivered with the right temporal feeling. Not, I will have this, but this is mine now, in the deepest structure of my being. The night shift builds what the blueprint specifies. Specify the present. They will build the present. Murphy also offered guidance on the physical environment of sleep that goes beyond the obvious and speaks to the specific conditions that maximize subconscious receptivity. He consistently recommended sleeping in a state of physical comfort and thermal ease, not because comfort is a luxury, but because physical discomfort activates the nervous system's threat monitoring function, which maintains a degree of the conscious firewall's activity even during sleep. A system in mild but constant physical discomfort is a system that does not fully release to the depth of theta processing. The firewall remains partially engaged, and the blueprint, while received, does not reach the deepest layers of the subconscious with the full penetration that produces the most profound and lasting results. Physical preparation of the sleep environment is therefore not separate from the protocol, it is part of it. The body that rests completely is the body whose subconscious can process completely. Comfort is a technical requirement. Furthermore, Murphy taught that the habit of reading uplifting, spiritually and philosophically precise material in the pre-sleep period serves a dual function. It clears the mental space of the day's reactive content by filling it with elevated constructive pattern, essentially preloading the system with better blueprint materials before the formal condensed phrase is submitted. And it engages the conscious mind in the kind of reflective, receptive mode that facilitates the descent to alpha and theta, rather than maintaining the beta arousal of problem-focused thinking. Murphy himself was an avid reader in the pre-sleep hours, selecting material that aligned with his understanding of the law and that would prime the subconscious with the pattern of that understanding. This practice compounds over time. the subconscious that is regularly fed precise, law-aligned thinking in the pre-sleep period develops progressively a deep structural pattern of alignment with the law, a background hum of correct understanding that makes each night's specific blueprint submission more effective because it operates on an already well-prepared substrate. The overarching directive of the Master's tips is, ultimately, this: treat the pre-sleep period as sacred engineering time. Not sacred in a superstitious sense, but sacred in the sense of consecrated, set apart for a specific, high-priority function that deserves the same precision, attention, and intentionality that a surgeon gives to a pre-operative preparation or that an engineer gives to the final verification of a design before it is submitted for construction. You are preparing to access the most powerful production system in your life. You are about to issue the instruction that will govern the most intensive period of creative activity in your daily cycle. The half hour before sleep is the pre-flight checklist for the most important flight your life takes every single night. Murphy's instruction is simple: check every item on the list, clear the cache, select the file, prepare the environment, choose peace, enter the descent, submit the blueprint, let the system run, wake in joy, and confirm the installation. Repeat. The law does not require anything more than this, and it will not accept anything less than the precise execution of this protocol if consistent results are what you seek. The question that any rigorously logical mind must eventually confront in engaging with Murphy's teaching is this: does any of this correspond to verifiable physical reality, or is it an elaborate metaphysical system that relies entirely on the willing suspension of scientific skepticism? Murphy himself never asked his students to choose between science and metaphysics. He insisted consistently that they were not in conflict, that metaphysical law and physical law described the same underlying reality from different levels of analysis. The Nocturnal download, viewed through the lens of contemporary neuroscience, does not require the student to set aside their scientific worldview. It requires them, rather, to see how precisely Murphy's operational descriptions map onto mechanisms that neuroscience has since measured, documented, and confirmed with instruments that did not exist in Murphy's era. The science does not validate Murphy. Murphy anticipated the science. The territory was already mapped. Neuroscience has since provided the topographical survey. The first and most foundational point of convergence is the phenomenon of sleep-based memory consolidation, one of the most robust and well-replicated findings in modern sleep neuroscience. The brain, during sleep, performs a systematic process of transferring information from the temporary storage of the hippocampus, the short-term processing buffer, to the long-term storage networks of the cortex. This is not passive archiving, it is active reprocessing. The brain literally replays and reintegrates the day's experiences during sleep, strengthening the neural connections that represent important information and pruning the connections that represent transient, unimportant data. The criterion by which the brain determines what is important enough to consolidate deeply is, in large measure, emotional charge. Experiences and thoughts that carried strong emotional content during waking are prioritized for deep consolidation. They are encoded more thoroughly, distributed more widely across the cortical network, and made more accessible to future recall and pattern recognition. The implication of this for the nocturnal download is both precise and powerful. The condensed phrase, delivered at the hypnagogic threshold with genuine emotional resonance, with the felt quality of peace, relief, and present reality, presents to the consolidation system exactly the profile of experience that receives priority processing, emotionally charged, recent, and held at the moment of maximum neural plasticity. The consolidation system cannot distinguish between a felt experience that actually occurred in the physical world and a felt experience that was deliberately constructed at the threshold of sleep. Both are processed by identical mechanisms, both receive priority encoding if they carry emotional weight, and both are distributed through the cortical network as deeply held, long-term patterns. Murphy was, with his condensed phrase and his insistence on feeling, exploiting the brain's own consolidation algorithm to encode a desired future state as a deeply held biological belief. The machine was building the blueprint from the inside out. The theta wave state is the second major point of neurological convergence, and its implications are equally precise. The theta frequency, 4 to 8 cycles per second, has been extensively studied as the characteristic brainwave state of several well-documented conditions. The hypnagogic and hypnopompic transitional states, deep meditation, the flow state of peak creative performance, and the state induced by clinical hypnosis. What these conditions share neurologically is a specific profile. The prefrontal cortex, the seat of the critical, analytical, self-monitoring conscious mind, shows reduced metabolic activity. The default mode network, associated with autobiographical memory and self-referential processing, is modulated toward a more open, less defensive pattern, and the brain's neuroplasticity, its physical capacity to form new neural connections and restructure existing ones, is measurably elevated. The theta state is neurologically the state of maximum brain change. It is the state in which the brain is most capable of being rewired. Murphy's identification of the hypnagogic theta state as the optimal window for subconscious programming is, therefore, not a metaphysical claim that happens to sound plausible. It is an accurate description of the specific neurological condition under which the brain is most susceptible to deep structural change, what neuroscientists now call neuroplasticity. The reduction of prefrontal critical activity in the theta state corresponds exactly to what Murphy described as the firewall going offline. The elevation of neuroplasticity in the theta state corresponds exactly to what Murphy described as the subconscious being maximally receptive. He was describing, in the language of metaphysical law, a specific, measurable, reproducible neurological event. The language differs. The phenomenon is identical. Furthermore, the neuroscience of neuroplasticity supports Murphy's insistence on consistency and repetition in the nocturnal download practice. Neural connections are not permanently altered by a single exposure, regardless of its intensity. Lasting structural change in the brain, the formation of deep, stable new patterns that function as default cognitive and emotional responses, requires repeated activation. Each repetition of the condensed phrase at the theta threshold is, neurologically, an instance of targeted neural activation during maximum plasticity. Over repeated sessions, the specific neural circuits associated with the desired state, the circuits of abundance perception, health consciousness, creative confidence, or whatever quality the blueprint specifies, are progressively strengthened. Their connection density increases. Their activation threshold decreases. They fire more easily, more automatically, with less conscious effort over time, until the desired state is genuinely the default operating mode of the system. Murphy called this a true belief. Neuroscience calls it a consolidated, deeply encoded neural pattern. They are the same thing. The third major neurological validation of the nocturnal download comes from the study of the default mode network and its activity during sleep. The default mode network is a set of brain regions that is active when the brain is not engaged in directed external tasks, during daydreaming, self-referential thought, and the integration of experience during sleep. Research has shown that the default mode network is heavily involved in the processing of future-oriented thought, the brain's spontaneous simulation of possible futures, the construction of expected scenarios, and their likely outcomes. During the theta state and the early stages of sleep, this network operates in a particularly generative mode, drawing on available emotional and experiential data to construct and evaluate potential futures. If the most emotionally potent recent input to this network is the condensed phrase delivered at the threshold, the default mode network's future simulation process will be preferentially oriented around that phrase's content. It will spend the night's processing time constructing, rehearsing, and refining neural representations of the desired future state. This is the mechanism of what Murphy called the subconscious working on the problem. The neuroscience names the network. Murphy named the law. They are pointing at the same process, the phenomenon of insight upon waking, the sudden answer, the unexpected solution, the creative breakthrough that arrives in the first moments of morning consciousness, is also thoroughly documented in the neuroscience of sleep and has a specific mechanistic explanation. During rapid eye movement sleep, The brain exhibits a pattern of neural connectivity that is distinct from waking cognition. Long-range connections between disparate brain regions are more active, and the normal inhibitory filtering that prevents unusual or non-obvious associations from reaching conscious awareness is reduced. This neurological condition is optimal for what researchers call remote associative thinking, the capacity to connect concepts and pieces of information that conscious linear processing would not naturally link. When the subconscious has been given a specific problem or desired outcome as its nightly blueprint, the elevated cross-regional connectivity of REM sleep is directed at that specific target, and the reduced inhibitory filtering means that unexpected, highly non-obvious solutions, the creative leaps that constitute genuine breakthrough, are more readily formed and more available to the emerging morning consciousness. The morning insight is not random inspiration. It is the output of a directed, enhanced cross-associative processing run that was commissioned at the threshold of sleep. This mechanistic understanding transforms the practitioner's relationship to the protocol at a very practical level. You are not simply repeating affirmations in the hope that something metaphysically mysterious will occur. You are issuing a targeted directive to the most sophisticated neural processing system in the known universe, and then providing it with the optimal conditions: deep sleep, complete surrender, consistent practice, under which to execute that directive at maximum effectiveness. The results you seek are not magical outcomes dependent on faith in the invisible. They are the natural, expected, neurologically coherent output of a correctly administered protocol applied to a correctly understood system. The science confirms the law. The law preceded the science. Murphy was, in the deepest sense, a neuroscientist operating decades before the instrumentation to prove his findings existed. He did not need the instruments. He had the law. The convergence of Murphy's teaching with the science of the default mode network extends to his consistent instruction on the emotional quality of the pre-sleep state. Research on the default mode network has demonstrated that its future simulation processes are heavily influenced by the current emotional valence of the person. A brain in a state of threat or anxiety generates future simulations that are predominantly threat-oriented. The network runs scenarios of failure, danger, and loss, effectively rehearsing the worst-case future in detail. A brain in a state of safety and positive expectation generates future simulations that are oriented toward opportunity, resolution, and positive outcome. Murphy's instruction to sleep in peace is, in modern neuroscience terms, an instruction to shift the emotional valence of the default mode network's input parameters before the night's simulation processing begins. Peace is not merely a pleasant state to sleep in. It is the parameter setting that determines whether the brain spends the night rehearsing disaster or engineering success. The consolidation research also validates the morning abort warning with neurological precision. Studies on memory consolidation have shown that newly consolidated memories, patterns that the brain has just finished encoding during the night, are in a state of relative fragility in the first moments after waking, before the full stabilization of the cortical integration process is complete. During this window, they are more susceptible to modification or interference from incoming information than they will be later in the day, when the consolidation process has fully stabilized. This is the neurological basis of the hypnopompic vulnerability that Murphy identified. The ascending passage from sleep is a window of heightened plasticity in both directions. The newly installed patterns are available to be confirmed and deepened, or they are available to be disrupted and countermanded. The first thought of the morning is not just emotionally significant. It is neurologically consequential. Applied to the most changeable and sensitive state, the newly consolidated patterns will be in for the entire day. "It is done" is not a spiritual nicety. It is a neurological confirmation command delivered at the precise moment of maximum consolidation vulnerability. The cumulative picture painted by the neuroscience is one of striking alignment with Murphy's engineering framework. The brain is, in demonstrable fact, a system that processes most of its deep structural change during sleep, using mechanisms of consolidation and cross-associative processing that are maximally active in the theta state, directionally influenced by the emotional quality of the last waking state, and highly susceptible to targeted input at the hypnagogic threshold. Murphy's framework maps onto this picture with the precision of a technical diagram. The language of the subconscious, the firewall, the blueprint, and the night shift is not poetry. It is accurate metaphysical engineering that describes, from the inside, a system that neuroscience has since described from the outside. The instrument used to study the system differs. The system described is the same, and the protocol for operating it optimally, as Murphy designed it and as neuroscience confirms, is the nocturnal download. History is not short of accounts of creative and intellectual breakthroughs arriving in the liminal space between sleep and waking, or in the midst of a dream following a period of focused inquiry. But among all such accounts, few illustrate the precise mechanical operation of Murphy's nocturnal download with more instructive clarity than the story of a structural engineer named Marcus, a man whose professional ordeal became, through the application of Murphy's protocol, one of the most personally transformative engineering stories of the quiet kind that does not make headlines but demonstrates the law with absolute precision. Marcus had been tasked with the design of a load-bearing joint for a large-scale infrastructure project, a component of unusual complexity that needed to simultaneously satisfy three mutually competing engineering requirements: extreme load tolerance, minimal material mass, and resistance to thermal expansion cycling. For 4 months, he worked on this problem through conventional means: calculations, prototypes, consultations with colleagues, iterations through standard design approaches. He was, by all professional measures, a highly competent engineer. But the problem had a quality of genuine novelty that repeatedly defeated his best analytical approaches. Each solution that satisfied 2 of the 3 requirements failed the third. He was caught in a triangular trap, and the deadline pressure that mounted with each passing week introduced an additional layer of stress that, as he later described it, seemed to narrow his thinking rather than sharpen it. The conscious mind, under the pressure of professional consequences, was cycling through the same analytical loops with increasing desperation and diminishing creativity. The factory floor was receiving a blueprint of escalating anxiety, and the output, predictably, was more of the same. A colleague who had studied Murphy's work suggested the reframe with a single question: have you tried asking the night shift? Marcus, an engineer by temperament and training, was initially skeptical, but the skepticism was, at this point, competing with the absolute failure of the conventional approach. He committed to a trial. That evening, he performed what was for him an unprecedented act of deliberate subconscious management. He worked at his desk until early evening, then stopped, not because the problem was solved, but because he had made a deliberate decision to transfer responsibility. He wrote the core constraint of the problem on a notepad in the clearest possible language, then placed it on his actual workbench, a gesture that, whether or not it held any intrinsic power, served his engineering mind as a concrete act of submission. This problem belongs to the night shift now, he wrote below it. He performed the cache clearance, addressing the residual frustration and professional anxiety of the day with a straightforward act of release. He selected his condensed phrase with precision. My subconscious mind knows the solution and is revealing it to me now. He lay down in quiet and repeated this phrase slowly as sleep took him, holding with it not a specific technical image, but the simple, felt quality of the problem being resolved, the relief of the answer arrived at, the quiet satisfaction of the completed design. He did not try to solve the problem in the falling. He simply transferred it with trust. He surrendered. The download initiated. On the 4th night, at approximately 3 in the morning, Marcus woke with an abruptness that he later described as unlike ordinary waking, not gradual, not confused, but precise and directed, as if something had completed a calculation and activated a signal to bring his conscious awareness online for the receipt of the result. He felt a visual imprint, not quite a dream image, but more specific than a passing thought, a structural configuration, a specific geometric relationship between elements, a shape of intersection he had not previously considered. The subconscious had processed the constraints across 4 nights of directed cross-associative analysis and arrived at a solution through a route of non-linear pattern recognition that the conscious analytical mind, with its commitment to established approaches, would never have navigated. Marcus Rose went to his desk and sketched the configuration from the image still present in the ascending hypnopompic clarity of half-waking. The drawing took 11 minutes. The configuration it described satisfied all 3 requirements. The design was complete. This is not a story about magic or mystical revelation. It is a story about the correct use of the most powerful processing system available to any human being who understands Murphy's law of the nocturnal download. The subconscious, given a clean, specific, emotionally grounded blueprint at the threshold of maximum receptivity, spent 4 nights of uninterrupted, cross-associative pattern recognition processing on a targeted problem and returned the solution through the most direct channel available, the hypnopompic ascending state, where subconscious processing is still active and the conscious mind is just re-engaging with sufficient clarity to receive and record the output. The 4-day duration is consistent with Murphy's observations about the time required for deep subconscious processing on complex, novel problems. The result is consistent with every account Murphy ever documented of this process applied correctly. The law executed, the factory built the blueprint, the engineer received the report. The solution was, as Murphy would have said, not invented in the dark. It was revealed from the infinite intelligence that already contained it, accessed through the one channel specifically designed to carry that kind of communication, the channel that opens every night, the channel called sleep. We have now traversed the complete architecture of the nocturnal download, from the mechanical foundation of the continuous operation to the precise execution of the data transfer protocol, to the neurological validation of the theta state, to the story of what the correctly administered protocol actually produces in the lived experience of a human being who trusts the law enough to use it. It is time to synthesize these elements into the single, irreducible conclusion that Murphy's entire teaching on sleep is driving toward, a conclusion that, once genuinely absorbed, permanently transforms the meaning of every night of your life. Sleep is not a break from creation. Sleep is the most intensive period of creation in your entire daily cycle. The waking hours are, by comparison, the period of receiving and responding to the output of the night's work, the manifestation layer, the interface between the subconscious's completed processing and the physical world's delivery system. What you experience in your waking hours, the quality of your ideas, the nature of the opportunities that present themselves, the health of your body, the character of your relationships, the direction of your financial circumstances, is not determined primarily by your waking effort. It is determined primarily by the blueprint that the night shift was given. The waking effort is the harvest. The sleeping processing is the cultivation. You have been harvesting all your life from a field you did not know you were planting. Tonight, and every night from this point forward, you will plant deliberately. The synthesis of this understanding produces a complete inversion of the conventional relationship between effort and rest. In the conventional paradigm, effort is the cause and results are the effect, with rest being merely the necessary recovery period that allows more effort to occur. In Murphy's paradigm, which the neuroscience increasingly supports, intentional rest is itself the primary cause, and the effort of the waking day is the secondary expression and harvesting of the causes set in motion during sleep. This does not mean that waking effort is irrelevant. The factory builds the blueprint, but someone still has to recognize the opportunity, make the phone call, take the action that the subconscious surfaces as guidance. But the quality, the direction, and the ultimate effectiveness of that waking effort is determined by the quality of the night's blueprint. Effort applied in alignment with a correct blueprint is efficient, resonant, and generative. Effort applied against the grain of a fear-based blueprint is exhausting, repetitive, and self-defeating. The difference is not talent, not discipline, not the external circumstances. The difference is the blueprint. Consequently, the most powerful upgrade you can make to the entire architecture of your life is not a new strategy, a new discipline, or a new set of waking practices, though these have their place. The most powerful upgrade is to become a precision engineer of your sleep, to treat the 8 hours you spend unconscious every night not as an absence from your life, but as its most active and consequential phase. Murphy was asking you to become the architect of the night, to approach the threshold of sleep not as an exhausted surrender to biological necessity, but as the most intentional, most powerful, most sovereign act of your daily existence. The night is not empty. It is full of the law's activity, full of the subconscious's tireless execution, full of the infinite intelligence's response to the instruction it has received. Make the instruction worthy of the intelligence that receives it. Stop fighting your battles in the exhausting daylight of the ego. This is not a counsel of passivity or resignation. It is the most profoundly active instruction Murphy ever gave. The ego, the surface conscious mind with its limited resources, its analytical loops, its fear-generated problem-solving, is the weakest creative force available to you. It is the manager who has forgotten that the factory exists. It struggles, projects, calculates and strains, attempting to manufacture from the daylight alone a life that can only be built from the subconscious up. Every hour you spend agonizing over a problem that you have not yet handed to the night shift is an hour of profound inefficiency. Not because effort is bad, but because you are using the wrong tool. The manager's job is to submit the blueprint. The night shift's job is to build it. When the manager tries to build by himself in daylight without the factory, the results reflect his limitations, not the law's capacity. The invitation is to a different relationship with your own interior. Murphy taught across decades and dozens of books a single consistent practice: trust the subconscious, not as a passive hope, but as an active operational trust. The trust of a person who has studied the system, understands the law, and has sufficient evidence from their own experience to know that the factory delivers. This trust is not built in a single session of beautiful theology. It is built the way all genuine trust is built, through experience. And the experience is available to you, beginning tonight, through the precise and consistent application of the data transfer protocol. Begin with a single night, clear the cache, select the file, enter the twilight state, plant the seed at the threshold, confirm in the morning. Observe what happens in the days that follow, not with desperate scrutiny, but with the quiet attentiveness of an engineer monitoring the output of a correctly running system. The system will report. The output will come. It always does. The law does not have exceptional days. Hand your heavy burdens to the master builder in the dark. This is Murphy's most poetic instruction, and it is also his most precise. Heavy burdens are the problems, fears, and desired outcomes that feel beyond the reach of your conscious striving, the debt that feels structural, the health challenge that resists every intervention, the relationship deadlock that seems impenetrable, the creative breakthrough that refuses to arrive through effort alone. These are not failures of your personal capacity. They are problems that are too complex, too multidimensional, and too deeply rooted for the conscious analytical mind to solve unilaterally. They require the infinite intelligence, the first cause that operates through the subconscious, with access to the total pattern of reality, not merely the slice of it visible to the waking ego. Murphy's promise is not that these burdens will disappear through magic. His promise is that when the correct blueprint describing their resolution is submitted to the subconscious at the threshold of sleep, with feeling and consistency and trust, the intelligence that runs the universe will begin to arrange conditions for the resolution from inside the mechanism of the law, not because it favors you, but because the law responds to instruction with mathematical certainty. Change the instruction. The law changes the output. This is not belief. This is physics. The night is yours to command. This is perhaps the most empowering single statement Murphy ever formulated, and it deserves to be felt in its full weight. Not, the night might be available to you if you are spiritually advanced enough, or the night can be useful if you happen to be the right kind of person. The night is yours. The access port opens for every human being, every night, without discrimination, without prerequisite, without charge. The subconscious that runs your heart does not require credentials before it receives your blueprint. The law of cause and effect does not check your background before it executes your instruction. The twilight state arrives in every human nervous system at the threshold of sleep, regardless of nationality, history, financial status, or spiritual development. The system is universal. The access is universal. The authority to issue the instruction is yours fully and completely from this night forward. Program the machine. This instruction in Murphy's framework is the core act of human sovereignty, the exercise of the authority that distinguishes a conscious, self-directed being from one who allows the default programming of culture, circumstance, and reactive thought to write their blueprint by default. Programming the machine is not complicated. The protocol is clear. The steps are defined. The mechanism is understood. What was missing for most people was not the capacity to do this. That capacity has been present in the human system since the first hypnagogic state a human being ever crossed. What was missing was the knowledge that the programming window exists, that it opens every night, and that the instruction submitted there is received by the subconscious with the authority of a first cause command. Murphy provided that knowledge. This transmission has detailed its mechanism. You now possess the operator's manual for a system that has been running in you, without your conscious direction, for every night of your life. The question that remains is simply this: what will you build tonight? Go to sleep and let the universe do the work. This is the final instruction, and it is the most difficult for the modern mind to fully receive. Not because it is philosophically complex, but because it requires the surrender of the control reflex that the ego has been exercising for years. The need to monitor, to manage, to stay awake, to ensure that things are handled correctly. These are the habits of a conscious mind that does not yet fully trust the subconscious to operate without supervision. Murphy's entire body of work is, in one sense, a sustained argument for the trustworthiness of the subconscious. The evidence he marshals is biological. The subconscious has been running your body without error for every moment of your life. It has never forgotten to beat your heart. It has never needed your conscious oversight to regulate your temperature, repair your cells, or coordinate the thousands of simultaneous biochemical operations that constitute your physical existence. This same intelligence, this perfectly reliable, perfectly obedient, perfectly capable master builder, is also the architect of your circumstances. Trust what has proven, without a single exception, to be trustworthy. Here is the challenge I am issuing to you directly. Not a suggestion, not an optional enhancement, not a practice to consider when you feel inspired. Our challenge: for exactly 7 consecutive nights beginning tonight, you will execute the complete Nocturnal download protocol with the precision of an engineer who understands exactly what they are operating and why each step matters. This is the 7-night upload challenge, and its terms are specific and non-negotiable if you are serious about observing its results. The first term: screens off 30 minutes before sleep, beginning tonight. No exceptions, no just this once. The pre-sleep window is sacred engineering time, and its sanctity is not negotiable. In those 30 minutes, you will perform the cache clearance, address the emotional residue of the day, forgive completely, and release the charge from the day's events with the words that work for you. You will select your condensed phrase, one phrase charged with genuine feeling, representing the single most important installation priority for this 7-night cycle. Write it down, hold it. Know it with your body, not just your mind. The second term: enter the descent consciously. Lie down in your prepared environment, release the tensions from your body, permit the alpha descent, and ride it toward the theta threshold without forcing or monitoring. As the threshold approaches, repeat your condensed phrase slowly, like a lullaby, holding the feeling of its accomplished reality. Let the words and the feeling carry into the dark with you. Cross the threshold holding them. Surrender. The third term: the morning confirmation. In the first seconds of waking, before the phone, before the day's obligations, before any reactive thought has time to form, say the confirmation command. It is done, or whatever words seal the night's installation for you. Say them with the authority of a person who knows exactly what they are confirming. The completed work of the most capable production system in the universe, executing a blueprint they issued with precision and intention. Seal the installation. Protect it. For 7 nights, execute this protocol without modification, without judgment of the results midstream, and without the impatience that wants to see the complete building before the foundation is poured. 7 nights of consistent, clean blueprint submissions. 7 mornings of confirmed installations. 1 week of your life invested in the operation of a law that has been available to you, unclaimed, for every night of your existence. What happens in 7 nights varies from person to person, because the subconscious of each practitioner comes to the protocol with a unique existing pattern landscape, and the specific blueprint chosen will produce its initial signals through whatever channels are most naturally open in that individual's life. Some people report the morning insight, the sudden solution to the problem they placed on the night shift's workbench. Some report a shift in the quality of their mornings, the unexpected ease, the lightness, the sense that the emotional weight they have been carrying has been partially redistributed to something much larger than themselves. Some report the external synchronicity, the unexpected phone call, the encounter that addresses the exact situation the blueprint described, the opportunity that arrives from a direction no conscious calculation could have anticipated. These are not remarkable coincidences. They are the predictable output of a law doing precisely what it always does, building what it is given. What makes them feel remarkable is simply that you, for the first time, consciously gave the instruction. The surprise is not in the law's response. The surprise is in the discovery of your own authority. Subscribe to sacred logic. Not because a subscription is a ritual or a gesture, but because the architecture of the law is not a single building. It is a city, and this transmission is one building within it. The complete mastery of the hidden hours, the full operational manual for the system. Murphy, Holmes, and the great architects of the mind have been decoding for centuries, is built layer by layer, transmission by transmission, concept by concept. Each transmission on this channel is a load-bearing element of a larger structure. Miss one, and the architecture has a gap. Subscribe, and the structure completes itself over time, night by night, download by download, until the life you are living is not the output of a default program running without your knowledge, but the precise, intentional, engineered expression of the blueprint you chose. The factory runs 24 hours a day. The night shift is on. The workbench is waiting. Leave tonight's blueprint deliberately. The download begins now.